Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to another episode of Boa Breeding Profiles, brought to you by SignatureSnakes.com. This is episode number 2. The focus of this episode is going to be pricing and price points. In the last episode, or I guess to start off the series, I talked about how the Boa Breeding Profiles is going to discuss all of my planned pairings over the next few years. We'll walk through each of their morphs and then go through the morph calculator that I developed to show everybody the probabilities of the litters that I'm going to get. But what I wanted to do is start off the series with a few background episodes, just kind of on some things you want to understand before you just start thinking about breeding boas. The first episode was on quality and the importance of selection of your breeding stock. Make sure you go check that out for a refresher. But like I said, this episode is going to be on price points and all of the things that kind of go into developing a price for a boa. I guess I want to introduce George. Many of you guys know him, but he's a beautiful Super Salmon Jungle het albino. We've got a lot of plans for him here at Signature Snakes, but just a gorgeous boa. Make sure you guys go check out his boa profiles video if you'd like to see more on him. But to get into it, like I said, price points is going to be the focus, so you know there are a ton of factors that go into determining a price. The first one we'll talk about is sex. When a boa is born, it takes a different amount of time for a male to reach maturity than it does for a female. Males can typically breed in about 18 to 24 months, where females usually, you can breed them in about 2 years, but you want to give them that third year for critical muscle mass development. So you can see there's a discrepancy in that. If you're dealing with a morph that is cutting edge, just came out, your males for those first 2 years are going to be more expensive because everybody's kind of in a rush to reproduce or to get to the next level in a morph, so the fastest one that's going to get you there is a male. Now translate that, or compare that to a female. A female, if a male and a female are born and they're both of kind of the cutting edge morph right up front, that male can reproduce faster, but once that female passes that 2-year cusp, the pricing is going to change because of the fact that she is still the first in line to reach maturity for the females of that morph, while the males may have been reproduced now after that 2-year mark. Maybe there are more males on the market after the 3-year, same thing. So that mature female is going to be worth more than the male. So that's about sex. We can talk about morphs. So typically you think of albino, you think of hypo, you think of motley maybe. Well, there's a whole range in pricing associated with those different morphs, and really all depends on supply and how long that morph has been available, how much production has occurred with that morph. So if you're talking about the call albino, that was the first morph really ever produced. So those are quite abundant. You can get them for pretty cheap nowadays. I've seen some for like $400, $300, which is, a year and a half ago, you're talking over $1,000 for sure. And then for the sharp strain, closer to $2,000, but we've seen those come down as well. So that's one side of it. Then you might talk about the maroons or the Aztec. Some of the really newer morphs, obviously those price tags are still way up in the thousands of dollars because of the fact that there's just not a lot of supply. And on the same lines, you want to think about dual morph, triple morph combinations. Am I buying a Sunglow? Well, that has albino and hypo in it versus just buying a hypo or albino, so Sunglow would obviously be more expensive. Another thing about price points is bloodline. You have to think about who produced this. Is there kind of a pedigree involved? Talk about the lipstick line hypo, or the lipstick line Sunglows. Those usually tend to command a higher price than some of the other ones. Even though, this isn't to say that it will always be like this. Sometimes you just might find a really good deal, and that kind of goes into the individual breeder. There are a lot of factors on their end, whether it be a male or female, as to how they want to price their boas. Let's say it's a relatively large breeder and they just had 4 litters of hypo boas, versus a small breeder who just had 1 litter and there were only 4 hypos in there. If they're the exact same bloodline, the 4 hypos from the smaller breeder are going to be more expensive just because their supply is far less, versus the person who has 3 or 4 litters full of these morphs and they want to sell them. So we talked about morph combinations, we talked about sex, we talked about age, and then again, like we went back to the first episode when we were talking about quality. That is a really, really big driving factor on pricing. If you're talking about an animal that when you look at it, you're like, oh my god, the thing is beautiful, obviously that's going to cost more than if you say, hey, that's a good looking hypo, but there's going to be a range and it's going to relate to that as well. So like I said, a number of factors that go into pricing. One question that I get a lot is this a good price for this boa? Take into consideration all the things I've talked about and really try to make that determination for yourself. Look at the number that they've produced, look at the bloodline they're dealing with, look at the quality, look at the age, look at the sex. There's a number of things that we just talked about. Additionally, I've gotten questions, one actually just a couple days ago, and I wanted to work this into this video because of it, but some people will ask me, hey, I've got X amount of dollars, what should I go after? Well, it's kind of hard for me to put an answer to that question, because when I started going after morphs, I didn't say I have this much to invest, I want to use that money. What I said is, that is a beautiful boa, I want it, I'm going to save up until I can get it. Really, when you're breeding, when you're trying to reproduce boas, you should be trying to reproduce the things that are appealing to you. If you think it's cool, if you think it looks awesome, chances are there's somebody else in the world who thinks the same thing and they're going to want to buy that boa. If you have a ballpark range of dollars, then you can still say, okay, these are the few different morphs that I want to go after. Let me see if I can find any boas that fit into that range. Maybe I need to save up some more money. Maybe I have more money than I thought I had, so I can buy 2 of them. Really, the choice should be on your end as to what you find appealing in the market and what you want to produce. Then after that, you structure your finances such that you can get there. So, but just kind of a quick run up the ladder, you're going to talk about albinos, call, and hypo kind of being at the lower end. Then you step it up to jungles and motleys. Then kind of you start combining the things at that same price point. Might be sun glows. There are moon glows out there that are still way higher. That's 3 morphs in one, anery, hypo, and anery, hypo, melanism, and why am I drawing a blank here? Anery, hypo, and albino. Sorry about that. But you can see, I mean, really there's a huge range, too many morphs to just kind of run through and say this should be more than this, because there are a lot of factors that are going to push the price up or pull it down. So if you have any specific questions like, hey, I found this boa, I really like this type of combination, do you have any suggestions as to lines that I might go after or something like that, I'm happy to field those questions. But just the generic question of, hey, I've got this much money, what should I go buy to make boas, I'm really not in support of that, just because of the fact that really you should be trying to produce those things that are awesome to you, and not just invest in a boa breeding project that might give you a return on your money, because really these things are a lot more difficult than people think. It takes a lot more time and effort involved in producing boas. I can attest to that. I had an unsuccessful season this last year, so you know there are a lot of factors on that end. But hope you guys have enjoyed this. Stay tuned for the next episodes. We're going to start getting into the pairings more, talk about actual plans that I have. We'll go through that morph calculator in detail for every pairing. Make sure you guys go check out the website, signaturesnakes.com. The boa morph page is really kind of started to develop out now. The first 4 morphs are all filled out, so just your common boa, hypo, call albino, as well as the VPIT positive. There's a nice history of stuff in there. You can also see all my projects, see all the boas in the collection, and also shoot me an email if you want that morph calculator if you're into that. But other than that, hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion on pricing here on Boa Morph Breeding Profiles, brought to you by Signature Snakes. Stay tuned for the next episode, and we will see you guys later.